Pretty much every single card game under the sun is the subject of censorship, and Yu-Gi-Oh! Is definitely not an exception. Some of the censorships make sense, some of them don't. Some things had to be censored right out of the gate of exporting from Japan to the rest of the world, and some are the subject of legal issues to the point where they can't be released to the TCG. Ladies, gentlemen, non-binaries, those with multiple identities and fluid identities, I present to you the world of Yu-Gi-Oh! Censorship. This video is far from a complete list. This is really more of the ones that I find interesting. There's a few reasons why Konami will censor cards, such as sexually suggestive themes, inappropriate activities, and otherwise questionable violence, and religious symbolism. Censorship begins right at the beginning of the TCG's lifespan and changing card typing. If you don't know already, fairies and fiends were originally angels and demons in the OCG, but they had to censor that because angels and demons are typically affiliated with religion. A fairy is kind of like an angel, and a fiend is kind of like a demon, so that's what we got slapped with at least the North American versions. And I guess the UK as well. Fiend was also slapped onto the German version of the game, but Demon was pretty much fine in every other language. Fairy did carry it over to pretty much every other language except for French. And French got slapped with elf. So for French, it went from angel to fairy to elf. And I don't know what it is, but I cannot help but laugh at the image of Thespian Tragedy being an elf. That ain't no elf. It's not really a fairy or angel either, but elf? I don't think that's an elf. Probably one of the more iconic examples of censorship is Monster Reborn, and it being changed from Ankh to this angelic ribbon looking thing. I'm pretty sure everyone watching this video knows what an Ankh is, but it's an Egyptian hieroglyphic that represents life that's also part of Egyptian religions, and as such, it had to be censored for the game. Which I found weird, because the show had plenty of references to Ankhs, including the Millennium Key. But I guess the show and the game are different on what they have to censor. I don't know. A Monster Reborn has both arts, so I guess that's kind of changed, maybe? I don't know. But things weren't just censored for religious reasons. They were also censored for acts of violence. Like, for example, Final Flame. The TCG artwork has a monster burning in some fire. The Japanese artwork, on the other hand, had someone burning at the stake, which is a pretty brutal way to die, to be perfectly honest with you. And people were burned at the stake for treason, heresy, and witchcraft. Obviously, they didn't want artwork that depicted that level of depravity in their children's card game when they imported it to the TCG. So they changed the artwork. Which leads me into my next card, Last Day of the Witch. In the TCG, we have this goofy looking artwork of a witch with a cross out symbol. Obviously not really meant to be taken seriously. However, in the OCG, it was a much different story. That artwork depicts the Salem witch trials. So yeah, much in the same vein as Final Flame, they had to change the artwork. But enough with all the violence for now. Let's shift our focus to public indecency. For example, Garvis. You don't really think about Garvis. I barely remember that he's a card. But in the OCG artwork, he's not exposed, but it's definitely risque, you know, make yourself decent, man. Put on some pants. There we go. But Sky Fortress Skyfire was exposed? Question mark? It's supposed to be a missile launcher, but it's a little too phallic. So yeah, they edited that part out. On the subject of questionable behavior, we have a more recent example of number 41, the Terribly Tired Taper. You want to know why he's so tired? it's because of that massive hangover he had. For yes, those weren't pillows he was holding in the OCG. They were bottles of alcohol. He was a drunk. When it comes down to references to alcohol, people get a little concerned when it comes down to children's media. So that had to go away. If you remember the original anime, then you probably remember Bakura's Destiny board and it spelling out final. In the Japanese version of the show and in the OCG, Destiny board spells out death. And in the TCG, they edited out the Ouija board. There are a few different reasons why they edited it out. Some believers of Christianity think it's satanic, and some religious groups think it can lead to demonic possession, and occultists are divided on the matter. Some agree with these religious groups, some of them don't. Personally, I think the concept of a Ouija board and talking to spirits, the dead, demons, or even Satan himself to be quite fascinating. But it's not provable by science. If you haven't noticed already, I use a Ouija board mat for my deck profiles, but also my deck box has a planchette sticker on it, along with some other things on it. And yeah. Regardless of what anyone believes, I'm not here to convince anyone one way or the other, but the Ouija board just had way too much negativity surrounding it, and it was censored for being a religious symbol. And people dying is bad, so they swapped out death for final. And I find all this kind of interesting because they kept the Ouija board for the English version of the anime. It just spelled out final, not death. Keeping up with the no satanic imagery, Dark Ruler Hades will always and forever have his horns edited out. They do this to avoid any type of satanic symbolism. And he will become the subject of Lost Art promos as a result, being that we have both uncensored versions of Hades himself and Skill Drain. But there are still many cards with his horns edited out, and the more commonly used one today is Dark Ruler No More. I want a Lost Art of that one, Konami. Hades needs his horns. I always thought the jewels just kind of look goofy, but maybe that's just me. And I simply cannot end this video without talking about Magi Magi Magician Gal. So, there is a story behind this one. Originally, this card was going to be an alternate art for Dark Magician Girl by Kazuki Takahashi. It was made to be similar to one of the alt arts to Dark Magician. Konami decided to just make it a new card and an Xyz monster. But there's a little bit of a problem when importing it to the TCG. And that is, it has to be censored. See, Kazuki Takahashi did not want his artwork to be censored. When talking about Dark Magician Girl, the subject of censorship usually revolves around her boobs. However, that's not actually the case with this card. The subject of censorship is the Ankh on her chest, which is a religious symbol. See, I thought because of Monster Reborn, I would have thought they would have just released it by now, because Monster Reborn features the Ankh, but still nothing. But I thought of a way they could kind of get around this. That is the Lost Art promos, which may at first be a bad idea, but what if they released it multiple times for the promo? They have already released the Lost Art of Dark Magician Girl twice, so why not re-release Magi Magi every so often so that it could get around the censorship issue and have a gateway to the TCG without censoring it. But let me know what you guys think about this, along with anything else down below, along with anything that I may have missed. I did have a little bit longer of a list than this, but I did have to size it down a little bit, so maybe I'll make a follow-up video in a few months from now. That's all for today. Next time, I think I'm going to talk about how I got that Red Eyes trophy behind me. My name is Vincent. I am the Race Duelist. Goodbye.